on YouTube,
It'll prompt you. Okay.
there we go.
It's,
All right, I
oh,
see it.
okay. Mhm.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we are now streaming live on YouTube. This is the preliminary hearing for Mr. Timothy Carter, charged in warrant numbers 2024 CW 71555, that's cruelty to children in the second degree, 2024 CW 71556, murder, and 2024 CW 71557, reckless conduct. Representing the state is Attorney Cheryl Freeman. Representing the defendant is Attorney Thomas Florio. Your witness, Attorney Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Duval, would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of State of Georgia versus Timothy Carter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
You can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
I am Detective Duval with Clayton County Police Department
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
for 5 years.
Were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on May 23rd of 2024?
Yes,
Now, regarding this incident, did you respond to the scene?
yes,
Was that 684 Sedgwick Drive?
yes.
And why did you and other officers respond to that location?
We ended up getting a call saying that it was a person shot, a juvenile that was shot, that was unresponsive.
What exactly is at that address?
You said, I'm not understanding what you mean.
What is there? Is it a house, a building, or
It's a house.
who all resides in that house?
Timothy Carter and his wife, Melissa Carter.
On this particular day, on May 23rd, 2024, who all was at the house?
It was Samaj Carter, Nasir Carter, and their sister, London Carter.
Are those individuals related to Mr. Timothy Carter?
Yes.
In what way?
They are his grandchildren.
So this particular day, were the grandchildren visiting or did they reside there?
From my knowledge from mom, she stayed there, we were just visiting.
When you and the officers arrived at the location, what did you learn that happened?
That Nasir was shot by his brother Samaj.
How old is Samaj?
Samaj is 12.
How old is Nasir?
If I'm not mistaken, 10.
Did Nasir pass away as a result of the shots?
Yes.
Did he pass away on the scene at that house, or did it happen at the hospital?
He was deceased on the scene.
Detective, if you know, where on Nasir's body was he shot?
It was like the mouth, in the mouth.
Inside of his mouth, or?
Yeah, it's like maybe under the lip, the mouth area.
Where did this shooting actually take place inside of the home?
It took place inside of Mr. Carter's bedroom.
Who all was in the bedroom when it happened?
Samaj and Nasir.
Were you able to determine what exactly happened?
From what we have, it was just more so like from what Samaj said, he shot his brother.
Was Samaj able to tell you how he got the firearm?
He did he didn't tell me, but it was a spontaneous utterance that he had. And he stated that he was getting on the bed, and then the firearm was under a blanket, and he pulled the trigger and that firearm went off and shot his brother.
What type of firearm was this?
Kel-Tec 410 I think is a shotgun.
When Samij found the firearm, was it already loaded?
From my knowledge, yes, the gun was loaded.
Was Samaj able to say whether or not he knew the gun was there?
Say that one more time, Ms. Freeman.
Was he able to say that he just knew the gun was there, or was he just searching for a gun?
He said the gun was just under the blanket.
When you and the officers arrived on the scene, were you able to locate the firearm?
Yes,
Where was it located?
it was on the bed.
What else was on the bed?
It was like maybe 15 to 20 guns that was on the bed.
Were these handguns, rifles, or what type of guns were just found on the bed?
It was a mixture between rifles, handguns, shotguns. It was a mixture.
Let me make sure I understand. These were just laying out in the open on the bed.
Yes.
Objection leading.
Well, Judge, I can just ask the detective. I was trying to be clear. Tell me, how were the guns laid out?
They were just out on the bed, just laid out on the bed.
Were these guns loaded?
Some of them were, some of them weren't.
Were any of these weapons secured in any way?
Objection relevance.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Objection relevance. Judge, I don't know. So there's an allegation that a gun discharged and a gun shot the young man. I don't know what relevance there is to other guns having been present inside the home or where they were located, whether they were loaded. That's irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is the gun that was involved in this incident.
Attorney Freeman?
Thank you, Judge. The reason I'm asking that is one of the charges is reckless conduct. And I think the fact that this defendant had all these guns and the condition of these guns, I think that all goes towards the reckless conduct in this shooting.
All right, overruled. You can
Thank you,
proceed.
Judge.
Attorney Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. My question, Detective, was, were any of these guns secured in any way?
The guns on the bed wasn't secured, and he had like safes, maybe 2 safes in the room, and he had some guns that were secured. But the guns that was on the bed, that they weren't secured.
The firearm that was used in this shooting, was it found alongside with these guns, or was it separate?
It was
Objection leading.
If you could, Detective, tell us where the gun that was used in this shooting, where was it found?
it was found on the bed.
Any particular place on the bed?
It was just found on the bed.
Were you able to speak to Mr. Carter about what happened? Timothy Carter, the defendant.
Okay,
Were you able to speak to him about what happened?
yes,
And before he made any statements, was he read his Miranda warnings?
yes.
What, if anything, did Mr. Carter say to you?
He didn't disclose anything. I read his Miranda. He didn't disclose anything. He didn't feel comfortable, so I just stepped back.
Was Mr. Carter's wife there
Well, at the precinct or
at the house?
When the incident occurred, or
Yes, when the incident occurred.
when the incident occurred, she wasn't there.
Was Mr. Carter there when the incident occurred?
No.
Who all was present in the home when the incident occurred?
It was just the children, Samaj, Nasir, and the sister London.
I know you stated that you spoke to Mr. Carter briefly. Was this at that home or at the precinct?
At the home, and when I spoke to him at the precinct, that's when he, said he wanted his lawyer. But at the home, I spoke to him very briefly.
Did Mr. Carter make any statements when you spoke to him at the home?
He did say that he collects guns and all the guns belong to him, and that he wasn't there. He was at work when the incident happened.
Did Mr. Carter's wife make any statements?
Oh, she didn't make any statements.
Was the gun that was used in the shooting placed into evidence?
Yes.
What about the other guns that were found? Were those left at the home or were those placed into evidence as well?
The guns that were found in the bed was taken into evidence. The rest of the guns, they were left. There were so many, so we just took the guns that were just accessible on the bed.
Were there any other witnesses to this incident that you were able to speak to?
The neighbors.
And what were the neighbors able to provide?
One of the neighbors stated that they saw Samaj scream. One of the neighbors said that he came to their house saying that he needed help and that his brother was shot. The other neighbor said that he came to her as well. These neighbors are like next door to each other. And then they went inside the home, and they saw Nasir in the bedroom, and they were too scared to do CPR while they was on the phone with 911. So they just kind of let him go. And one of the neighbors disclosed to me that the London Carter stated that she was downstairs and she heard a noise. She went upstairs and she saw Samaj and Nasir. Well, Nasir on the ground and Samaj.
Detective, were you able to determine how long the children had been at the home alone without any adults?
At that day, no, I wasn't able to determine that day.
Have you since been able to determine that?
Other than what Defects told me, Defects said they've been at that residence. Well, they've been going to school in Clayton County, Money's Mill area. So, that was the beginning of August. So.
When you spoke to the defendant, Mr. Carter, he stated that he had been at work that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you able to determine what time, how long he had been at work?
No, I wasn't able to.
Okay. Detective, the gun that was used by Samaj in this incident, were you able to confirm if that gun belonged to Mr. Carter?
Yes, he said all the guns belong to him.
Did this incident happen in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's all I have.
No problem.
All right, Attorney Florio.
Yes, Judge. Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective.
How you doing, sir?
How are you? So you took 3 warrants out for Mr. Carter's arrest. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'd like to start with the reckless conduct. Do you remember swearing a warrant out for him for reckless conduct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me that the predicate act alleged is the fact that he left firearms out? Those firearms having been left out in the open, you believed was a reckless act. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And based upon and you've been with Clayton County Police for 5 years now, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you with any other law enforcement agencies prior to Clayton County?
No, I was with I was only with Clayton County, but I was a
Gotcha.
correctional officer at DeKalb County.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And so you're familiar with the legal term reckless, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're familiar with the reckless conduct statute, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And based off of your training and experience, you formed the opinion that the act of Mr. Carter having left those firearms unattended was indeed a reckless act. Is that correct?
Reckless and negligent.
Okay. Well, now you'd agree with me that reckless and negligent are two different terms, correct?
Yes. Yeah, you can say that.
Okay. Right. And so you'd agree with me that there's reckless acts and there's negligent acts. The law identifies reckless acts and negligent acts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's why there's different statutes, because there's reckless conduct indicating someone's conduct was reckless. And then there may be other acts which are negligent. You'd agree with me. You'd agree that those are both correct statements
Yes.
of the law, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so based off of your investigation, you believe that he had acted recklessly. Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, you told the truth when you swore the warrant out for reckless conduct, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's because you felt that reckless was that was the act that he had committed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about this. So the home that this occurred at, is this a typical 2-3 story type home here in Clayton County?
It's a 2-story home.
Okay. And you found that home to be the home of Mr. Carter and his wife, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Carter would be the children's grandfather. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You'd agree with me that I believe you testified earlier that the room in which this incident occurred, this would have been Mr. Carter's bedroom. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You'd agree with me that the children had their own bedroom inside the home. Is that correct?
I didn't see any other bedrooms for the children. So I just seen the bedroom that they were in, and then the grandmother's room, but I didn't see any bedrooms for the children. Not that I remember.
Gotcha. Did it appear did you go in the bedroom that you identified as Mr. Carter's bedroom?
Yes.
Okay. Did that appear to be a bedroom where children were living and sleeping in?
No.
Okay. You'd agree with me that there were bathrooms outside of Mr. Carter's bedroom, correct? And what I mean by that is that the only bathroom in the house was not in Mr. Carter's bedroom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You'd agree with me that there was food and water located outside of Mr. Carter's bedroom. And what I mean by that is you'd agree with me that the kitchen was not in Mr. Carter's bedroom. Is that correct?
No, the kitchen was downstairs.
Gotcha. Okay. You'd agree with me that there were televisions and entertainment for the children located outside of the bedroom you identified as Mr. Carter's bedroom. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And so I understood you to say that at some point, what time did this incident occur? Do you know?
I don't remember for sure, but I know it was like maybe roughly. I came on the shift around 2 o'clock, so maybe like 30 minutes after me going on shift, if I'm not mistaken, just roughly around those times, 2 or 3 o'clock.
Okay. And I understood you to say that there was a specific gun that was involved in this incident. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I understood you to testify on direct that you were told by Samaj that gun was under a blanket. Is that correct?
I wasn't told by Samaj. When I was executing the search warrant, he was brought back to headquarters and he made a spontaneous utterance to another detective, and that detective called me, stating that that's what he said.
Who is that detective?
Detective Jay Gant.
How does that detective spell their name?
Jason Gant. Was it first name is Jason?
Oh, Jason Gant.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so Detective Gant told you that Samaj told him that the gun in question was located under a blanket. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that blanket was located on Mr. Carter's bed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was your understanding that from Detective Gant from Samaj that at some point Samaj climbed on top of the bed, and while climbing on top of the bed, he made some sort of contact with the firearm and it discharged. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'd agree with me that that discharge was accidental. Is that correct? You don't believe that Samaj intentionally shot Nathir, do you?
I can't say, but I don't, like I said, I don't feel like it was intentional. I don't think
Right.
so.
Your investigation has largely led you to believe that it was an accidental shooting. Is that correct?
Because I'm still investigating, so I would say
Sure.
still under investigation. So
Okay. Do you have an opinion right now as to whether it was accidental or intentional?
I say that it was accidental.
Okay. And Samaj has been charged with accidentally having shot Nasir. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. You've not charged Samaj with the intentional shooting of his brother. Is that correct?
I charged him with involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct.
Okay. Okay. Just 1 second, please, Your Honor.
Mhm.
You did not find that Mr. Carter acted with malice aforethought, did you?
Which Carter, Samaj or
I'm sorry. I apologize. That was poorly not clear. Timothy Carter. You did not find that Mr. Timothy Carter acted with malice aforethought, did you?
no?
That's right. That's why you didn't charge him with malice murder.
No, I charged him with murder to the second, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Did you have a chance to observe Mr. Timothy Carter at the scene?
What do you mean?
Did you have a chance to make contact or observe Timothy Carter at his home after the shooting?
Yes,
Okay.
him and Miss Melissa Carter. They were there like near the car while we were executing the search warrant, but they were like further like up the road.
Did he appear to be emotional? Did he appear to be sad? Was he happy? What did you observe him?
They were both emotional. They were both emotional.
And by emotional, do you mean emotional sad or emotional happy or emotional mad?
Emotional sad. I think a mixture of both, like emotional sad.
Okay. You'd agree with me that Timothy Carter is not a convicted felon. Is that correct?
From my knowledge, I don't think he's a convicted felon.
Right. You'd agree with me that there's nothing illegal about him having these firearms inside of his home. Is that correct?
No.
Were you able to determine why the children were in Mr. Timothy Carter's bedroom?
No, I wasn't able to. They didn't want to speak in reference to, they didn't want to speak to me if their lawyer wasn't present. So I said, okay. So
When you say they, do you mean Samaj wasn't willing to speak with you without a lawyer present?
I'm sorry, Timothy Carter, Melissa Carter, and Samaj.
Okay. Thank you, Detective. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect, Attorney Freeman?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
All right, Attorney Florio, do you have any witnesses?
I do not, Your Honor. Just closing.
All right, closing arguments, Attorney Freeman?
State waives opening.
All right, Attorney Florio, go ahead.
Yes, Judge. Judge, so as the Honorable Court knows, what you call something is not what controls it. It's the allegation, the allegata. That's what controls it. And so when we look at the allegata, meaning the language in each of these warrants, Judge, all three of them contradict each other. So, Your Honor, the first warrant, that being cruelty to children in the second degree, alleges that by way of that we were criminally negligent by leaving 100 plus firearms and accessories in a bedroom where Nasir was found unresponsive. The murder in the second degree warrant alleges that a person commits the offense of murder when he unlawfully and with malice aforethought, either express or implied, causes the death of another human being. The third warrant, reckless conduct, alleges the exact same language as the first warrant, but alleges that the act of having left the firearms in the bedroom was a reckless act. And so we've been accused in three separate warrants with three separate levels of criminal culpability, both negligent, reckless, and malice. And so I'll point the court to the warrant for felony murder in the second degree. Felony murder in the second degree, Judge, is a negligent standard. This warrant was issued in error. The warrant, Your Honor, alleges malice murder. If you were to read the warrant, that being 2024 CW 71556, the allegation in it is a malice murder allegation. So while it was called murder in the second degree, it alleges that we committed the offense of malice murder. It's just simply, the detective has testified today that she found no example of us acting with malice. And there is no proof of malice in this case. I believe what the detective said. I believe that when the detective said that she found that he acted reckless, I believe that that's truly what she believes by way of her investigation. If the court were to find that we acted recklessly, then I think the appropriate charges for Mr. Carter would be the exact same as for Samaj, and that would be a reckless conduct and involuntary manslaughter. Those would be the appropriate charges. Now, Judge, I don't concede that we acted recklessly, and the reason why I don't concede we acted recklessly is because the testimony was that the gun used was located in Mr. Carter's bedroom under a blanket. And that's not a reckless act. He's a grown man. He's not a convicted felon. This is his home. This is his bedroom. There is a gun located under the blankets in his bed, and that is the gun that they allege was used. There's nothing reckless about that act. I understand that there were other guns found inside the home that may have been out in the open, but Judge, those guns, that's irrelevant. Those guns were not involved in this incident. So whether they were out in the open or not is irrelevant. The only relevant firearm is the firearm that was involved in this incident. And Your Honor, that gun was located under a blanket in his bedroom. There's no reckless act that's occurred. There's no negligent act that's occurred. He didn't do anything recklessly or anything negligently. He had a gun under a blanket in his bedroom. That's not a crime. It's not a crime. I understand that the young man that was involved in this, Mr. Samaj, he's been charged with reckless conduct. He's been charged with involuntary manslaughter, and that makes sense because the predicate for involuntary manslaughter is a reckless act. So if you charge him with reckless conduct, it would logically follow that he would be charged with involuntary manslaughter. It is not logical that we would be charged with reckless conduct and that we would then be charged with murder in the second degree. That's not logical. That doesn't follow. And so I would ask the court to dismiss these three warrants because I don't believe the state has met their burden in proving that we acted either recklessly or negligently or with malice aforethought. Again, the predicate act is a gun under the blanket on his bed, in his bedroom, in his home. That's not a crime. It's a tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy, but it is not a crime. If the court were to find that a crime has been committed, I would ask that the court bind over the reckless conduct warrant, and I would ask that the court amend the felony murder in the second degree to involuntary manslaughter. Logically, it would follow. It doesn't make sense that the child would be charged with involuntary manslaughter. The child that unfortunately caused the death of his brother would be charged with involuntary manslaughter, and Mr. Carter would be charged with felony murder in the second. That's not logical. For him to be charged with a worse degree of crime, a more serious crime than the young man that committed the act is not logical and doesn't follow. So if the court were to find probable cause for anything today, I would ask that this case be bound over to Superior Court as a reckless conduct and an involuntary manslaughter, and that the cruelty to children warrant be dismissed. Thank you, Your Honor.
Attorney Freeman?
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that all the charges are bound over to Superior Court. And what I do want to say, whether or not Samaj was charged with involuntary manslaughter or whatever his charges are, those are the warrants or the charges that Detective Beauvoir took out. Once the district attorney's office reviews everything, he certainly may be charged with something else. So I don't want the court to base the court's decision on these charges based on that. But when we look at the statute, Judge, and we look at the cruelty to children in the second degree, and those elements are with criminal negligence, causing a child under 18 cruel or excessive physical or mental pain. And Judge, and I know that Attorney Florio has talked about this gun under a blanket on Mr. Carter's bed. Well, this was a loaded gun with children at the residence with no adults present. He was at work. We don't know how long he had been away. His wife wasn't there. And so we have two children under the age of 18 who are around a loaded gun on a bed full of other guns. I certainly believe that would fit the statute for the cruelty to children in the second degree, which falls under murder in the second degree, because it says in the commission of cruelty to children in the second degree, causing the death of another. And that's exactly what we have, Judge. And I think the other charge, the reckless conduct, again, when you look at the circumstances of what happened, yes, it's not illegal for Mr. Carter to have guns. Detective Bouval was not able to say that he was a convicted felon or anything like that. So it's not illegal for him to have the guns. But what the problem is Mr. Carter having a loaded firearm in addition to other loaded guns laying around in the open with two juveniles present. And so, Judge, we believe that those circumstances fit all of these charges, and we are asking that you bind all of these charges over to Superior Court.
All right, and so based upon the evidence presented, cruelty to children, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause. Reckless conduct, I do find that there's sufficient probable cause. The murder, I am going to reduce to involuntary manslaughter. And that's all the charges. So that's the order of the court.
Your Honor, we have a bond hearing tomorrow morning in front of the Honorable Judge Scott in Superior Court. May I please get a copy of the court's order today so I can tender them, just in case the paperwork doesn't get in the system quick enough, so that I can tender them tomorrow morning before Judge Scott in Superior Court?
Yeah, so as soon as I get that, I will email you a copy of it.
Thank you so much, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge. May Detective Bouval be excused.
Yes, and that
Thank you,
concludes our business today.
I believe it does, Judge. Detective, you're excused. Thank you.
Thank you so much.